Test 1, 2, 3. Okay, morning councillors and staff. Welcome to the November Corporate Services meeting, of course the last one of this term of council. Just before we start off, Councillor Fisher, of course this is your last Corporate Services meeting. We thank you for your contribution over the years and we wish well in your freedom away from being a councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll move on. Declare the meeting opened at 8:30 and call for apologies.
Yeah, Councillor Watts, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Ron Campbell.
Okay, I've got to move it there, please.
I'll move.
Move Councillor Fisher, second Councillor Burns. All in favour? Application for attending meeting by videos link, we've got nil. Disclosure of interests, nil. Public participation, nil. Business items, CORP 11.1, financial summary and investment report, page 1. Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll just go straight into page 2, which gives you the financial information summary for the year to date, October 2021. It's indicating that we've got a positive variance at the moment of 4.36 million, which compares to the positive variance of the previous month in September of 3.85 million. As highlighted in that meeting that we had for the end of month September, which happened in October, we've done a pretty critical review of our proposed works program and has made numerous votes in regards to projects which we won't be able to complete in this current financial year. So we've had a number of meetings in regards to those projects coming through. And as we go through, we'll highlight those. We've provided a summary in the actual capital works area, just highlighting the reasons why some of those projects have been deferred or delayed coming through. Just moving into the numbers on page 3, overall year to date, our revenue streams are up by about 860,000. Two main contributing factors to that is that our RMS or Transport for New South Wales State Roads revenue is lower by about $250,000. And that's just lower requests at this point in time from Transport over there for our individual price works orders, which is the requests that they make outside of our normal maintenance routines. But the increase seen there for the 860,000 is mainly due to an additional $1 million that we received from the public spaces program. So our second milestone payment for the $2 million came in. So at the moment we've got 300,000 plus the 1 million come through in milestone payments for the St Albans green area in Kelly Street.
What's the current, sorry, through the chair, what's the current timing of that job and the revitalisation progress?
The Main Street revitalisation, sorry, Councillor, is that what you're asking me? Yeah. So this is in regard to the public spaces budget, which is the St Albans Square, but as you know, it'll be tied in with the Kelly Street project overall. That's right, yep. The works at this stage probably have a design ready prior to Christmas. We have discussed amongst the staff the logic of putting out a tender prior to Christmas or waiting till after Christmas. We still think that even though the construction industry shuts down over the Christmas break, if we can get the tender out prior to Christmas, there are benefits to do that. And we can put the tender out prior to Christmas and still have a mid-February closing date for the tenders, which gives tenderers still an opportunity to have a break if they want or stand their work crews down, but any management staff or quoting staff that are still working will be able to work over that period and quote the job. At this stage, that's the plan, that we'll probably put the tender out just prior to Christmas, and it may be mid-December or thereabouts.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Just moving further down through the actual the financial summary on page 3, our non-operating revenue expenditures are a little bit behind budget at the moment by about 120k. Our internal fleet hire is down a little bit at this point in time, which has a bit of a reflection on the actual capital works program being a little bit behind in some of our road infrastructure works. But that normally catches up with those projects as they come on tap. Relatively to budget, it's pretty constant. So it's pretty consistent to our overall budget. So it's not too bad. Our operating expenditure is pretty well nearly in line overall. It's about 1.3% out by about 220,000. The items involved in this area is more or less government place hostel. So we've still continuing to have a fair few costs in regards to government place, just with the associated staff employment, with the difficulties encountered with vacancies and rostering issues, and also just a few consultancy fees and so forth that we've had to pay. So we're continuing to monitor that budget to try and bring that back into some sort of an alignment. The RMS state roads is lower than budget by $219,000, obviously with the individual price works orders with the requests. So we haven't had those costs coming through. So obviously it's an offsetter against our revenue streams being lower. The regional roads maintenance is higher than budget. Local and regional roads maintenance is higher than budget by about 292,000. Incorporates a bit of resheeting program in there as well, which we're reviewing and reallocating to the capital works area. So that will improve our capital works area for that. So apart from that, it's not too bad. So they're the 3 main items of the operating expenditure that are kicking that out by about 220,000. The main driver for the positive variance is the capital works program, as highlighted earlier. So overall, we've got a number of projects to the end of October that are behind budget coming through, and they include the White Park electrical supply upgrade. So it's lower by about 700,000. And effectively, the schedule of the supply of the electrical unit isn't expected until April, May next year. So we're actually waiting on componentry from overseas before we can actually start the job. So that's the reason for the delay there. The footpath over at Mary was lower by about 124,000. It's just been delayed by availability of contractor, which is a common theme throughout a lot of these projects, especially with all the restrictions that have been held. But hopefully now that the restrictions are being lifted, it may help us along. Main Road 62 is lower than budget by nearly 700,000. The works are continuing. We've just been, again, due to weather and with the rain, obviously, and with the contractors' availability. The shoulder widening out at 62 as well. It's a little bit behind. Completion is expected though in December, so hopefully we'll be able to push that along. The repair works out at the Beltrees Hill, so it's continuing, but it's a little bit behind schedule again. Our local roads heavy patching is lower than budget by about $250,000, but these works need to be finalised before we can reseal. So obviously they will be completed over the next month or so. So that'll get that up and going. Ringwood Road, lower than budget by 370. Works continues, still behind schedule. Moonam Brook Road, lower than budget by about $500,000. And as you'll see, we'll be writing some of these projects out. But the delay of this project is with the designs being completed and the tender has to be advertised early next year for actual construction. The rural roads reshedding program's lower by about $500,000 at this point in time. We have got a few of those maintenance costs, as I mentioned earlier, that will come into that area there, but it's still behind budget at this point. So the guys are out there doing a lot of reshedding at the moment. And again, we're using a lot of contractors to do these works, mainly with our workforce not being able to, we don't have sufficient workforce to be able to do these works coming through. And the last one there is sewer renewals and replacements, lower by about 170,000. Obviously, we've done a tender and we've assessed the tender and have got it awarded. So those works will be completed over the course of the next 6 months. So that'll catch that up pretty quick. But as you can see, it's effectively a positive variance of $4.36 million. Overall, our net variations coming through, there's no net variations at this point in time. So the budget position pretty well staying where it sits at the moment. But we've got a number of deferrals that are in and out effectively through the system. The bank funds and investments, at the end of October, we had about $32.5 million in funds available, of which just under 32 million sitting in investments under term deposits or bonds. So there's a schedule involved in the actual report that highlights the actual investments that we're holding. And the big one is the capital expenditure report. So as at the end of October 21, we had a revised program now of just under 40 million. So initially we started off with just under 65 million. So we've dropped it off by about 25 million, which we will see coming through over the thing. So as you can see on page 6, so over the last couple of months, the senior management group and finance has pretty well been going through and doing a critical review of all our capital works programs and seeing where we're actually going to deliver by the end of June. Based on all those and the major projects that we've got and the availability of a lot of contractors and so forth, the overall total of the proposed deferral is about $26 million. So we've gone through and been realistic when we've gone through and had a look at our numbers coming into the mix. So the number of reasons for these surrenders was relate to unsuccessful grant applications. But normally it comes back to the delays in works based on availability of contractors and getting tenders out and so forth, with a lot of restrictions held in place. So as you can see, that we've done a table up in regards to all the projects that we're going to apply for an actual deferral coming through the mix. So as you can see, if you want to go through them individually, we've got Campbell's Corner, which is, there'll be $300,000, which is works that is for review identified by the KPMG structural report, and are continuing with the majority of costs in the current year deferred till next year once the review of the proposed library has been done. So there's a sort of like a chicken and egg story there, where you have to actually look at where our public library is going first before we can actually go through and do a proper evaluation.
Oh, Wayne, can I just comment on that as well? Yep. We have been successful in getting a grant for $50,000 to do a business case for Campbell's Corner. So that will give us a holistic way forward for the facility, and also for White Park as well. Yep.
Just through the chair, will that sort of look at options, or is it around one central idea? Are we going to?
It's a blank canvas at this stage, but obviously the upstairs area needs a business case, whether that be a business hub, arts and cultural, or a mix. We're going to look at the highest and best use of that in consultation with the community.
Mm-hmm. The next one there is more or less in regards to our waste facilities. We're just looking at, especially with a lot of the COVID restrictions and so forth, we haven't really been able to progress our closure programs coming through. So obviously we'll back out $1 million of that works. The closure programs are continuing to be done by consultants coming through. Our green lid waste bin introduction, obviously we're waiting upon FOGO to be approved by Muswellbrook at this point in time. So obviously we'll be looking at getting that through the mix at the end of next year.
I just have a question about that through you, Mr. Chair. Muswellbrook is running a green bin at the moment. So I'm just wondering where they're sending their gear to, if we're dependent on them.
Yeah, through the chair, it's the green bin they're running at the moment is for garden waste only. We're talking about food organics and garden organics, and we're waiting on Muswellbrook to build their processing facility.
Thank you.
So we've got 320 being deferred out of there. The extension and upgrade of the RFS and SES shed at Merriwar, it's grant funded related, and effectively the grant funding was unsuccessful. So we're just backing out the whole lot of the grant funding and the actual project at this point until such time as they're successful coming through. The White Park upgrade of the electrical. So the design works of the upgrade of the electrical is continuing, but the major componentry, as I said earlier, in April and May won't be expected to hit the shores. So we've backed out 600,000 of that project. The Morales Street low-level bridge, Obviously now we've got some clear air coming through exactly what we're going to do. So we're proposing to send that out to tender early in the 2022 year, and then obviously start the project up. So we've got about 750 of that being backed out in the current year. Our 9 bridge replacement program out of the 14 that we've achieved funding for, we're backing out about 900,000 for 5 of the bridges, which the works will commence, but the contractor has more or less advised that their timeline is that those will be completed in the first few months of the next financial year. So we've backed out those sort of costs coming through. Colson's Creek rehabilitation works, so Main Road 358. So obviously we've got detailed designs being done at this point in time, but it's not expected that the tender for construction will be issued until February, March, and due to the major construction that's going to be needed, we don't expect that about $4.5 million of that $6 million to be expended by the end of the year. Obviously, we still need to look at how much that project's going to cost and the funding for that project coming through as well. So that is another little delay to the project as well. Moonam Brook Road, the seal and upgrade out there. More or less, again, we've got the designs and everything being done at the moment. The tender's not expected to be issued until like February, March next year. And then effectively then it'll have to be adopted, approved with a recommended contractor, and then we'll be undertaking work. So there'll be only minimal spend by the end of the 22 financial year. So that'll just defer into next financial year. Hunter Road, the Narracourt to Glenmore Bridge project, we've more or less backed out the $2 million in grant funding that we've allocated coming through. The project's worth $4.6 million. We're still waiting on $2.6 million of grant funding that needs to be become available for us to actually undertake the works. So, but we can't start the works until we actually secure those funds, because once you start the works, you knock out your funding streams. Scone CBD Revitalization, we've backed out here $6 million, and it's mainly due to delays in designs and negotiation with Transport New South Wales on the main roadway. Tenders expected, as the General Manager mentioned earlier, tenders expected to be issued early in the 22 year, but however, due to the major contract works, is not expected to commence until May, June in 22. So we've more or less backed out the $6 million out of the $7 million. Another one that was raised earlier, the St Albans Green, the public space area there. Initially, we've had 300,000 in there to commence that works. So we're backing out 250. We're leaving 50 in there for the design works in regards to that precinct. However, the majority of that project will be tied in and completed with the CBD revitalisation works coming through to make sure it all gels together. The Marundi Water Village reticulation. Effectively, we're having further community consultations in regards to that reticulation. The village the water supply to the villages. So effectively, we're backing out $450,000 of the initial funding that we had in there. So we'll be taking that again to community consultation to work out the best scenario for the villages going through from the pipeline itself. Scone Water, UV and chlorination. There's been a delay in the detailed designs of the project. Tenders expected to be issued again in February, March next year, which leaves very limited time for any construction work. So we've backed out 1.5 out of the 1.72 for this current financial year. And the sewer, Castle sewer system, following initial designs and costings exceeding the budget allocations, council seeking further feedback in regards to the varying options before progressing the project. So we've more or less had to back out 1.25 of that project for the current year. Now, with a lot of these deferrals and everything, if there is a chance that these projects can be advanced prior to end of June, then they'll come back into the system. because they're all effectively, except for the ones that had unsuccessful grant funding, are funded projects. So anything that we have got full funding for and we'll be able to undertake, we'll be trying to undertake those projects coming through. Moving just then into our overall summary of the year to date to the end of October. On page 10, we've got the fund summaries there coming through. As you can see, the request votes all match back to nil in the mix. And you can see that the $4.36 million in positive variance there. Overall, then you've got the services reports, the service area of the functions, which is from 11 through to 13, and more or less just gives you a snapshot of how each of those service areas are going effectively based on admin down to water supply, and the votes that we're actually applying against those items. So as you can see, we're backing out about nearly 15 million in revenue streams, and then 15 million also in our reserves, which we've had grant funding received or coming through. And then the other side, we've got non-operating expenditure and then our capital expenditure. So as you can see, the $25.55 million in votes going through. The reason why we said earlier in the report that it was $26.2 million we're deferring from our projects. We actually brought on a couple of new projects where we've actually received some grant funding. So there's a couple of projects that have come into the mix as well. And then pretty well goes through exactly our votes coming through, or proposed requests for votes and surrenders coming through on pages 14 through to 16. So more or less to look at your leisure coming through. So the other reports that we have there coming through after those request votes coming into the mix is our bank reconciliation, which more or less shows you the line of how our bank and investment funds are going over the last 12 months. So as you can see, we've had a few peaks and troughs coming through, and at the moment we're doing a bit of spending in regards to some of our capital works areas, especially out of the airport and so forth. So it's coming down, but it'll turn around and go the other way. We've then got the schedule of investments on page 18. So that more or less just shows your investments that we're holding at this point in time, just under the $32 million. As you can see, it's very small interest rates that we've been achieving coming through. But unfortunately, that's the market at this point in time. And the final report there that we've got is the capital works expenditure, and more or less gives you the summary overall coming through, and the votes that are actually happening against those projects. So as you can see, the revised budget's down just below the $40 million out from the 60, just below 65. So coming through. So obviously from page 20 through to page 32 is our more detailed avenue of all those projects. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one. The White Park electrical supply upgrade, that's a lot of money to put into a I would suggest is that not overcapitalizing that area?
No, effectively that's the actual quotes that we've got back for doing the actual work down there. So it'll end up being about $800,000 project in the end.
So why why do we have to upgrade the power? Because my understanding, I haven't been involved in it, so.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah,
we need
so
more
this-
power down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just through the chair, it's mainly to look at the overall major infrastructure projects that are going to happen as well. So that it'll encompass all the camping powered sites and everything. So we're actually looking for the future.
Oh, you're,
Yep.
okay. So yeah, we're looking to the future.
Yep.
Love it. Thank you.
No more questions, councillors? Just on White Park, I had the honour of being down there on Saturday at the camp draft and nothing but positive comments. Jade Smith said to pass it on. He's very appreciative of the council's contribution towards it all and can't wait to see this move forward. Okay, councillors, any more questions on that? No more questions. Go back to page 1. Recommendation that council note the 5 parts of the recommendation. You've got to move it, Councillor Burns, second, Councillor Fisher. All in favour? Against? Carried. Over to page 33, Scone Airport project update. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This month for this project is actually a good news story. There's been a lot of progress made. It's all been positive, apart from the fact that the wet weather's hit in the last week. There's been very good progress made on all fronts there. So if we just look at the air side, there's some rectification works to be done there on some drainage and the engine run-up bay. And we had Darracon on site last week, the week before last, my apologies, going through the work there, and they were scheduled to do that. They were going to start delivering equipment to site and materials to site on the 1st of December and get that finished before Christmas. We'll have to wait and see how this weather affects things, but that was what the plan was 2 weeks ago.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Chris, can you also give the committee just an update on the flooding that's occurred over the last couple of days? Because when we had rainfall last time, we had a lot of flooding already without the drainage works actually being done. Can you just give a summary of whether that's caused dramas again or whether it's under control?
I haven't had a chance this morning to catch up what's happened after the weekend, although Christian did inform me that he spoke with Mark and that there is not much effect at the airport itself.
Yeah, I think after this meeting, I'm going to go out there and meet out there and have a good look around airside and just compare to what the last rain event was.
And during the month also, the airport fencing tender was awarded, and the fencing contractors are actually out there this morning with Mark going around and looking at the site. On the Hunter Warbird site, the remedial works have been completed during the last month. The independent engineers have inspected the works and certified it as being done correctly, and they're happy to sign off on the rectification works. Following behind that, there's been some painting. The priming of the steel components that needed priming have been done. And then the roof has started to go on. And painting underneath that has actually started as well. So good news in general. On budget, we're about 3/4 of the way through the works on the Hunter Warbirds section, and we've got about $145,000 in contingency left. So it's tight, but we're keeping a tight rein on that. All the variations have been dealt with to date. The contractors are performing well, and there's been no work health and safety incidents in the last month. So just again, recapping the work that's been done in the last month. Remedial works complete, painting started, the roofing has commenced. They're halfway through that at the end of last week. Terminal, in the terminal itself, the roofing's complete, glazing and doors are in, services, rough-ins have all been completed. The internal cladding is just about complete. Same with the external cladding. It was just a little bit, still about a day's worth still to be done there last. The roller doors are actually in place. They're not clad, but the structure of them are in place and they're rolling nicely. And the fire services pipes being installed up below the roofing structure. So over the next month, the roof on the hangar itself, the roof and wall cladding will be completed. The internal painting will be mostly completed. The fire sprinkler systems will be in. The fire tanks will be in. The pump house will be under construction, and the rainwater tank slabs will be done. And the terminal itself, all the cladding will be done. The painting will be just about completed. And on the fencing will be well underway within the next month. The critical issues for attention as they stand is just close monitoring of progress of the construction program. There's still, a lot of things that need to be coordinated. The hearing loop supply and installation needs to be coordinated in January. Design and fabrication of the support system for the 2 mounted planes. That's the one outside plus the Messerschmitt model inside, and the fit out of the terminal building with furniture. Major risks really is the weather until we get all the cladding complete. Weather can hold us up. And then coordination of the construction with the council managed works. So we've got to keeping a tight eye on those. Completion wise, the Kingston are still aiming and working towards the 1st of February completion, and that will get the exhibition installation started on the 7th of February, which will take a couple of weeks and be completed by the 21st of Feb. So that's the current plan, and they'll make, as I said, they've made really good progress in the last month, and we're holding those dates. If we go to the expenditure, year-to-date expenditure, just over $2 million against a revised budget of just under 7. So that'll catch up as the project draws to completion and all the invoices come in. And that brings us to the end. Are there any questions?
No questions? Thanks, Chris. Well done to you and the team again. Certainly you've had some hurdles to jump during the time, but we're well and truly on track. And again, well done to you and the team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillors, back to page 33. The council receives the report and note the information. Got a mover, Councillor Burns. Second, Councillor Fisher. All in favour? Against? Carried. Over to page 42, potential solar farm, Aberdeen. Who's speaking to this one? Mr. Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the last couple of years, we've received quite a number of inquiries from solar farm developers in relation to land that we own at Aberdeen. And it seems like those inquiries are becoming more and more regular. We're recommending that council call for expressions of interest from solar farm developers to develop a solar farm on this site, and basically leave it open to the developers to come up with different models or arrangements that we could look at. So happy to take any questions.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Great idea, love it. Have we done community consultation on this yet?
Through the chair, not yet.
I just worry that we might have put the cart before the horse, because that is a fairly close area to the public. Not everyone likes solar farms. I personally would love it there. It wouldn't worry me, but I don't live in Aberdeen, so.
Through the chair, it is something that we can certainly do once we know what model or arrangement we're looking at. It'll give us a better idea, and then we can consult the community.
Can I just add too, and Mr. Pringle can maybe confirm, it will still be subject to a DA, and that will go through its own community consultation process, of course, as well.
Excellent.
Any further questions? No further questions. Page 42, there's a recommendation. We've got a mover. Move councillor Fisher, second councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, over to page 47, response to previous questions. I'm quite happy with mine. Councillor Campbell's an apology. Councillor Burns.
Extremely happy with mine, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Okay, councillors, any further councillor questions? No? Okay, if not, any further business? Again, councillor Fisher, great to work with you, and we'll certainly still see you around the Upper Shire. Thank you very much. And we'll declare the meeting closed at 9:06.